Hi, my name is Nathan Shapiro, and I am choosing to speak about how the abolishment of the EPA will affect global climate and environmental agreements around the world. In order for me to accomplish this, I think that you need to know a basic background about the government agency that is the Environmental Protection Agency. The EPA was established in 1970 due to the United States industrializing with no regulation on pollution. President Nixon was the president at the time who responded to multiple environmental incidents in the years previous. The main one that caught the public's eye was when the Cuyahoga River in Ohio caught on fire due to its pollution levels. The EPA's role in the United States is to protect human health by safeguarding the air we breathe, water we drink, and maintain the land on which we live. Since this point, the EPA as an agency has expanded greatly, supplying many jobs, taking on many responsibilities, however, at the price of the American taxpayer's dollar. The EPA has put many environmental regulations into place that are the backbone of the United States. Laws such as the Safe Drinking Water Act, which allows the EPA to regulate the quality of public drinking water. I think that this is a great example to talk about right now because of what is happening in Flint, Michigan, where they use lead pipes which after years of corrosion deteriorate and leak into the water, causing brain defects in developing children. Although there have been steps forward at the end of the Obama administration when the EPA was receiving proper funding and government budget, now, at the beginning of the Trump administration, it is not taking those steps forward. The EPA is the reason that the U.S. was able to industrialize and not cause major harm to the public while doing so. Now that you know more about the agency of the EPA and how they are a role in the United States, I would like to talk about what the EPA does out of the United States. The EPA participates in bilateral cooperative programs with countries all over the world to benefit the environment and try to lead by example when it comes to environmental policy. The U.S. has the best environmental regulation in the world, which is why we can go and get tap water at essentially 99.9% of public facilities and drink the water safely. The U.S. being a presence in developing countries is crucial because the U.S. has been through it all. We have developed with no environmental regulation. We saw the economic downside of having to clean up afterwards and spend the money on the environmental cleanup. The EPA currently has agreements all around the world, including Antarctica, Japan, Brazil, Russia, the EU, Israel, and Mexico, to try and avoid those. Essentially, what the EPA does is go into other countries and improve the judicial and legal structures or design of the regulatory systems for environmental protection in the area. The main priority of the EPA when in other countries is to promote habits that will reduce global climate change and improve children's environmental health. In my opinion, as a superpower in this world, I think it is the United States' duty to help with environmental regulations strictly for the reason of saving lives in other countries. This is what the EPA does. I will now begin to talk about the EPA's role in world policy world policy within the United Nations Environment Program, or the UNEP. The UNEP was established in 1972 and addresses environmental issues at the global and regional levels for the United Nations. The EPA has always had a huge role in the UNEP due to the UNEP being an organization through the United Nations, and the United States is the #1 financial provider of the United Nations. However, it wasn't until 2016, just last year in September, that the UNEP and EPA signed a contract stating the duties of the UNEP and how the EPA will attribute to these duties. I highly suggest you look at the whole memorandum online at www.epa.gov. I will highlight a few of the important statements in the memorandum. The first 3 statements of the memorandum are what I found extremely important, and they are as follows. The UNEP is the leading organization within the United Nations, governing those nations that follow in the field of the environment. The second statement. The EPA is to protect human health and the environment within the United States. and the EPA may consist, with applicable law, cooperate with other nations and organizations to protect the environment globally. The following statement after that is that the UNEP share common goals with the EPA with regard to the protection and conservation of the environment. They will collaborate to further these common goals and objectives in the future. This is what the EPA does internationally. The EPA has currently been cut from federal funding, and President Trump is trying to get rid of the EPA. Although I am an advocate for the environment, he does make some valid points. He says that the EPA uses too much tax-paying dollars and federal budget in other countries. He says that climate change is not an immediate threat and that we should not stop developing countries from attempting to industrialize how they want because it is good for the global economy. Although this is true, I believe that the EPA does too much good overseas and the issues that they are dealing with are ethically correct. The United States has had periods in our history where babies have developed poorly in areas due to lack of environmental regulation. I believe that if we can stop this from happening in another country, it is our ethical duty to do so. These are acts of saving humanity, and that should be first and foremost. Once that happens, we can figure out who owes who money for the measures that we had to take to save those lives. The EPA has had big influence in the U.S., who has had big influence in the United Nations, who has big influence in the UNEP. The UNEP is the organization that comes up with international environmental policy or agreements such as the Kyoto Protocol. The EPA needs to stay in existence. It has done too much good for human health in the U.S. and overseas for us to just throw the organization away. I hope that after listening to me, you will agree. Thank you for your time.